Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about comparatives and superlatives. You can find the related content in Speak Out Intermediate Students Book, Unit 5.1, Grammar, on page 57. First, let's get started with the overview of our video. At the beginning, we are going to remember how we formed comparative and superlative adjectives. Next, we are going to have a look at the use of quantifiers with comparatives and superlatives. After that, we are going to go over other expressions that are used for making comparisons. Next, we are going to have two different practice parts, and in the end, you're going to have some further study and practice suggestions. If you're ready, let's get started. As you know, the whole world is struggling with coronavirus, and certainly our lives have changed. Now, please think of your life before corona and think of your life now. What has changed? Pause the video for 2 or 3 minutes and make short notes in your notebook. Okay, if you have finished, let me give you my own examples. For example, my life was much more enjoyable before COVID-19. Or, I and my family members were thinner. Or, my grandmother was less worried about her health before Corona. I'm sure you all have good ideas and sentences in your notebook. Please keep them, as you can also use them for the writing or speaking task at the end of the video. Now, let's remember how we form comparative and superlative adjectives. Please go over the sentences to remember the comparative and superlative forms. As you can remember, we use the comparative adjectives when we want to compare two things or people. For example, she told the proficiency exam was easier than she expected. Or, eating out is more expensive than cooking at home. These are examples of comparatives. And we use the superlatives when we want to compare 3 or more things. For example, for me, she is the most beautiful girl in the world. Or, she is one of the tallest students in our classroom. These are examples of superlative adjectives. Now, let's remember the rules. To form comparative adjectives, first we need to decide if the adjective is short or long. With short adjectives, we mean one-syllable adjectives and two-syllable adjectives ending in Y. And with long adjectives, we mean two-syllable and longer adjectives. For the short ones, we add ER at the end of the adjective and make it comparative. For instance, small, smaller, nice, nicer. Of course, you should be careful about the spelling, as the suffix may change according to the adjective. For instance, in friendly, the Y turns into an I, okay? Or in big, you double the last consonant. For the long adjectives, we add more or less before the adjective and make it comparative. For example, beautiful, more beautiful, or crowded, less crowded. To form the superlative adjectives, again, for the short ones, we add the plus est at the end of the adjective. The easiest or the hottest. For the long ones, we use the most or the least before the adjective. For example, the most popular or the least expensive. Of course, we have got some adjectives that have irregular comparative and superlative forms. The most common ones are good, bad, and far. And you can see the comparative and superlative versions. Good, better, the best. Bad, worse, the worst. Or far, farther, the farthest. So, After revising the rules about comparative and superlative adjectives, we can now move on to the use of quantifiers with comparatives and superlatives. Let's have a look at the example, the first sentence. He is far more handsome than his brother. Here, I use far to show that the difference is a big one. He is far more handsome. In the second example, I use another word to show that the difference is a small one. Today, it is slightly colder. It is a bit colder. Or I can use by far before the superlative, again to show that the difference is big. It is by far the most difficult exam I've ever taken. Or the concert was a lot better than many people expected. So I use these words before the comparative and superlative adjectives to show if the difference is big or small. Moreover, there are some other structures we use to make comparisons. There are two structures here. The first one is the plus comparative and the second one is as. The first structure, the plus comparative, and again you double it with the sentence. Here we use this structure to show the cause and effect relationship while making a comparison. For instance, the older he got, the wiser he became, or the harder you study, the more successful you'll be. If you look at the sentences, you can see that we use the plus comparative and the sentence, and in the second part, I do the same thing again. The sunnier it is, the better I feel. The second structure, as, is used when we want to show that the two things are equal or not. For instance, my mother isn't as old as my father, so it means that they're not equal. My mother is younger. In the second example, English is as difficult as Chinese to me. Here, the meaning is they're equal. They are the same. So, it's time for practice now. In the first practice, you're going to rewrite the given sentences using the words in bold so that they have the same meaning. Let's have a look at the example together. My little sister is much more hardworking than me, and I'm going to use far in my second sentence. So, I put it like, my little sister is far more hardworking than me. Now, you got 5 different sentences, and please rewrite them in your notebook. After finishing the exercises, you can check your answers here. In the second practice, please think of 2 or more TV series you have watched on Netflix so far. I'm sure you have watched a lot. In your notebook, write at least 5 sentences comparing 2 or more of them. For example, in my opinion, Black Mirror is by far the best on Netflix. Or Outlander was not as gripping as Breaking Bad. You can also share your comments on your Edmodo classes or in your WhatsApp groups and comment on each other's sentences and preferences. Lastly, you can find further study and practice suggestions on this slide. Please check them and try to complete as much as possible. Thank you. Stay home, stay safe.